share. Who are we about to meet? It's the Patriot of the Week.
Richard Nixon served as a U.S. representative, congressman, and the 37th President of the United States before he resigned from office in 1974. Nixon was born in California in 1913 and attended Whittier College and then Duke Law School before practicing law. During World War II, Nixon served as a lieutenant commander in the Navy before leaving the service and getting elected to the House of Representatives and then the Senate in 1950. Just 2 years later, he was selected as the running mate for General Eisenhower, and the ticket won the presidential election in 1952. Nixon served as vice president for 8 years. He then became the Republican Party's nominee for president in 1960 and lost the election narrowly to John F. Kennedy. But he would win the nomination again in 1968 and go on to win the presidency. Under his leadership, he reduced tensions with China and the USSR and appointed constitutionalist justices to the Supreme Court, and eventually ended the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. In perhaps one of the most famous phone calls in history, on July 20th, 1969, Nixon called American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin from the Oval Office to congratulate them for being the first men to walk on the moon.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House.
Nixon won the presidency again in a landslide in the election of 1972. But within a few months, he was implicated in the infamous Watergate scandal, stemming from a break-in at the Democratic National Committee campaign offices at the Watergate Hotel. Nixon denied any personal involvement, but resigned his office nonetheless in August 1974, in the hopes that his resignation could quell the political firestorm that divided the country. Vice President Gerald Ford took office and granted Nixon a pardon. Nixon died 20 years later in 1994 after writing numerous books about his life and foreign policy. His is a mixed legacy of a successful presidency marred by scandal and the first ever resignation from our nation's highest office.